All right. Welcome to week 9 and happy Halloween. I don't know if any folks have parties or anything like that this evening. You may. It's a good night for that. But figured I would get a couple of hours in ahead of Thursday night football in case anybody maybe needed anything. Keep the normal cadence. I don't have a costume. I was like, I don't know. I had something lined up for the weekend. I have a costume party on the weekend after the holiday. But that plan got nixed. So now I'm scrambling again. So I don't know. I'll have one by the weekend. So no costume today. Just football. We can talk about Halloween if you want. We can do the whole thing about the candy and the costumes and all that stuff. But y'all already know what the focus is. We have Texans-Jets tonight. I don't know. Not the most exciting matchup. The Jets are 2-5. Their offense is not super exciting. Been a tough go of it for them so far this year. One of the, I think, bottom 3 scoring offenses in the league. So, this could be a boring matchup, admittedly. You lower expectations for week to week on Thursday night football anyway. Just potential quality of play goes down on a short week. But when there's a bad team hosting that short week, it almost feels like it's magnified. Still, we'll go over the guys that make the most sense to fire up tonight. Anybody that's on the flex radar for this evening. And then I'll get into the injury reports that we have through Wednesday and Thursday. And then, of course, I will get to any questions after that. Ideally, maybe as I go through things that might answer a question or two. But, of course, y'all know the drill at this point. We'll get to questions all the same once I go through the latest updates that we have around the league. For tonight, the running backs are in your starting lineup. Joe Mixon, Breece Hall. Mixon more confidently than Breece. Go figure, as nobody would have expected going into the season as far as calling Mixon a must start and Breece only like a marginal. You have to start him because he's Breece Hall, even though he hasn't quite lived up to expectations overall this year. Mixon has, though. He's been a top flight RB1 on the season when he has played, missed a couple of games, but when he has played, he has been a top 5 running back or better in each game from a fantasy perspective. And he's getting bell cow usage. Dameon Pierce is out tonight. Mixon is on the field 80% of the time for the Texans anyway, so he's in your lineup with all the confidence in the world. We're firing up Breece Hall, even though Braylon Allen remains a thorn in his side. Hall continues to get most of the work and has been more productive, but he is ceding a lot of opportunities to Braylon Allen, and Allen was the one who got the goal line touchdown, not Breece Hall. But Hall got 16 carries to Allen's 12 and did much better overall with the opportunities that he got. Turned 16 carries into 80 rushing yards last week. Braylon Allen got 12 carries for 32 yards. Not as effective, but got the touchdown, which, vultures Breece Hall. Hall is also running more routes, so he is still the primary. He's more than a 1A. He is the 1 for the Jets, but Braylon Allen is very much involved in the game plan any given week. And on a short week, you figure that the backup running backs will see a little bit more work, help keep the position fresh again on a short week. So Braylon Allen will likely mix in tonight. You have to start Breece Hall, though. You have to start Garrett Wilson. You have to start Tank Dell. Tank Dell, tough spot on the road. We'll see Sauce Gardner. Is G.J. Reed playing in this game? He played on the 27th. That was this past weekend against the Patriots. I don't see him on the injury report for anything. So they'll have their starting secondary, but no Stephon Diggs, no Nico Collins. I mean, Tank Dell should be able to come through with a decent amount of volume. So you're starting Tank Dell. You're starting Garrett Wilson. He continues to be the guy that leads the Jets in targets, although Davante Adams could eventually. There's still a possibility that Adams usurps Wilson eventually, although it's going to be more difficult being a midseason acquisition, not necessarily just because he has a previous connection with Aaron Rodgers. Adams is a little older now at this point. So is Rodgers. The performance hasn't been great through 2 weeks thus far. If they start to get their chemistry back, we could see Adams overtake Wilson, but that's not right now. Wilson remains the number one wide receiver for the Jets. So you're going right back to the well with him. He's on the wide receiver one, low-end wide receiver one projections for this week. And expect the Jets will have to throw against the tough defense that Houston will be bringing to town. Does bring to town. They're already there. Duh. Game's in 2 hours after all. But Wilson, you fire up. Tank Dell, you fire up at wide receiver. Davante Adams is more on the flex radar. You may not have a better option than Davante Adams. And, you know, the glass half full way of looking at Adams is Garrett Wilson will likely draw Sauce Gardner this evening. DJ Reed is a good football player, a good cornerback. If you have to, it's a pick your poison situation in the secondary for the Jets defense. And I mean that in a good way for the Jets, not so much for their opposition, but you'll take your chances against the guy who doesn't have to go up against Sauce Gardner, generally speaking. So Adams has a chance to come through from that perspective. But the problem is he's been in that role the past couple of weeks and hasn't delivered. Of course, he just got there. He just got to New York. Yes, he's worked with Rodgers in the past, but it's, you know, this type of stuff is going to take time. Yes, they have a connection from prior years in Green Bay, but Garrett Wilson is the cemented, locked-in wide receiver one from the jump. This is not a one-to-one comparison as far as the previous time we saw Rodgers throwing the ball to Adams on a game-to-game basis. So the situation is a little different. I understand. I know you guys all understand that, but unfortunately, that means that we kind of have to lower expectations a little bit. Still, Adams is a flex play. You may not have a better alternate option than him. He's more on the wide receiver 3 radar, but he's got wide receiver 2 upside because he's still Davante Adams. Everybody else in this game is kind of gross, and I'm going to say CJ Stroud is included in that gross list that I have. What's going on, Derek? No Stephon Diggs, no Nico Collins. I mean, Tank Dell, Xavier Hutchinson, John Mechie, Dalton Schultz. I don't necessarily know, I was talking earlier about how this might be an ugly game tonight because of the Jets offense. The Texans offense is severely limited right now, especially their passing attack. This might be a gross game. And I don't know that I necessarily feel good about CJ Stroud on the road in this matchup. The only guys that I feel confident that I have to put into my starting lineup in this game are Joe Mixon, Breece Hall. I wish he was a duh. He's close, but you still fire him up as a starting running back. You fire up Garrett Wilson. You fire up Tank Dell from a volume perspective, and Davante Adams is on the flex radar. Everybody else I kind of don't want to start in this game, including CJ Stroud. In one quarterback leagues, I would maybe, is Kirk Cousins available on the wire? Maybe he's the guy on your bench. If you have CJ Stroud, I would highly suggest considering pivoting off of him if you haven't already. This is a tough spot. He's down his top 2 wideouts on the road, short week. This is not an ideal spot for CJ Stroud. So I would look to move off of him if you can. You may not be able to. And in Superflex, you definitely can't move off of him. I would say the same probably goes for Aaron Rodgers in Superflex, depending on who your quarterbacks are and who your alternate options are. You probably have to go to both of these guys. You definitely have to go to Stroud in Superflex. You may have to go to Rodgers in Superflex. But the Jets are a brutal matchup by the numbers for opposing quarterbacks, even at full strength. Stroud is down Diggs and Nico in this game. I would move off of him in one quarterback leagues. Dalton Schultz, you can do better at tight end. Ty Conklin has caught a couple of touchdowns, but I mean, 3 targets, 4 targets, 4 targets. It's worked out. All you need from a streaming tight end is a touchdown. It's just super volatile. Alan Lazard is out. Mike Williams steps into that wide receiver 3 role. You could do better than that. Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie, they may get 30 to 40 receiving yards in this game. Maybe. One might do a little bit better. One of them probably has, like a 50% chance to catch a touchdown. I'm not going to be the one to tell you which dart throw to fire between Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie, so I would look to avoid there. A lot of unappealing options, admittedly, in this game from a fantasy perspective. This could be a gross, defensive struggle. But there are still obvious plays tonight. Mixon, Breece, Garrett Wilson. Tank Dell maybe not as obvious, but I think he will be fine from a volume perspective. And then Adams is on the flex radar. Okay. That is a general overview from a fantasy perspective of tonight's game. If you have a specific question that was not answered by my general thoughts, I'm happy to take a look at your situation and we can go from there. First, I will go through what we have as far as the latest injury updates through 2 days of practice, and then I will start taking questions. Starting with this morning or earlier today. This was a pleasant surprise. Tyrone Tracy, he was in the concussion protocol. It was, he suffered a concussion on Monday night against Pittsburgh, but practiced in a limited fashion on Thursday. He missed yesterday, which was entirely expected. This could put Tyrone Tracy on track to potentially not miss a game this week. So we have to keep an eye on that, but he probably still has a few steps to go to clear the concussion protocol. It's a 5-step process. He might get cleared in time for this game. It's not uncommon to see players miss a game after suffering a concussion. So let's not hold our breath. We're hoping for the best with Tyrone Tracy, not just from a fantasy perspective, but for his long-term health in general. But we got to keep, let's not we can pencil him into a starting, like a flex position possibly, but we're not writing his name in pen. It's not set in stone. Tomorrow's update for Tyrone Tracy will be big. Juju Smith-Schuster does not practice today. That is more like the first day of practice because the Chiefs are playing on Monday Night Football along with Tampa Bay. So along with that, I know that Bucky Irving missed practice today for that game, but this is the first day of practice for the Monday night players. So not as much of a concern for the missed Thursday practice. However, it was reported later as it pertains to Bucky Irving that he's dealing with a toe injury that could linger all season long. There's not really much we can do here. It sounds like he's going to try to play through it. If he's not on the injury report on Sundays and he's playing well, he's in flex consideration. So we're going to take it a day at a time, a week at a time when it comes to Bucky. Hopefully this injury isn't enough to bother him to the point where he has to miss games. But that's what we're potentially looking at with Bucky Irving. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Don't expect him to practice on Wednesdays anytime soon. And maybe not Thursdays either. This will be a rare scenario where that might not be a bad thing for his availability moving forward week to week. Jordan Love participated in practice Thursday, suffered a groin injury last week, missed practice yesterday, practiced in a limited fashion today. So that puts Love on track to not miss any time after he fell on his back, or he went down on his back, like was down for a little while after getting shaken up in the game last week. But seen participating in practice today. So good sign for Love, good news for the offense all the way around. T. Higgins not participating in practice again on Thursday. This is an unfortunate development, and Higgins was looking really good, having finally gotten on the field and been consistent recently after missing time at the beginning of the season. Combination of injury and contract dispute. Now looking likely to miss a second straight game. Would not be good for Joe Burrow as well. Obviously, Higgins you could just pull out of your lineup, but it makes Burrow less enticing, less appealing if he's down to just Jamar Chase and then Yossi Vash and Trenton Irwin and the 45 tight ends that they have on that roster. Better matchup against the Raiders for the Bengals this week, but when you're down a player like T. Higgins, it can hurt the ceiling of the offense. And Burrow felt that last week. He didn't have a good week. He didn't have a week worthy of starting in one quarterback leagues. So keep ears and eyes close to this situation. We may want to consider alternate options from Burrow in one quarterback leagues if he doesn't have T. Higgins. It's a good matchup, so you may not have a better alternative. But 10-team leagues, there may be somebody available on the wire that is a more enticing stream. 12-team leagues even, there might be somebody like a Matthew Stafford that's out there. A Kirk Cousins that is out there that's a more enticing stream than Joe Burrow without T. Higgins, even in a good matchup against the Raiders. Let's pay close attention to that one. Lamar Jackson, this one is also one worth monitoring, not participating in practice for the second straight day today. You rarely raise any eyebrows at a missed practice on Wednesday for a veteran. They're often rest days. It's noteworthy when they also miss a Thursday practice. Even if he gets in a limited session on Friday, tomorrow, we're not worried about Lamar's availability. And right now, we're still not super panicking. But it's something to monitor. So if you have Lamar Jackson, again, there could be some... You're going to have to be quick with it. Pay attention. Stay locked in. If you have Joe Burrow, if you have Lamar Jackson, if you have Jordan Love, between injuries, either to the quarterbacks themselves or to important members of their supporting cast in Burrow's place, we may be wanting to look at streaming options in one quarterback leagues this week. So maybe if you have one of those guys, Lamar, Burrow, Love, you may already have contingency plans if you have Love because he got injured in the game. But the Lamar developments are relatively fresher, so they may not, if you have Lamar, you may not have a contingency plan right now. It's time to keep an eye on the waiver wire at quarterback and maybe start making plans to pick a quarterback up for streaming purposes for week 9, depending on who you have. Jonathan Brooks logs a full practice for the second straight day on Thursday. We are looking likely to get Jonathan Brooks' NFL debut this weekend, which is huge news, very exciting. Making his way back from the ACL injury that he suffered at Texas last year. Going to make his NFL debut. We are not firing him up in any capacity. We have to take this slow, take things easy. Plus, we don't automatically trust the Panthers offense no matter who is suiting up for them. So let's take this a day at a time. I can tell you definitively, if you have start-sit questions, and I encourage you to come back on Saturday or Sunday. There won't be a Sunday start-sit stream this week because of the Munich game. But if you come back on Saturday, I'm probably not going to be advocating for Jonathan Brooks in his first game action after missing the first 8 weeks of the season due to injury, rehab, and recovery. We are leaving him on the bench or in IR if you don't have to make any roster moves, if your lineup is set the way you currently have it and you're good to go. No need to activate him off IR. Leave him there. Let's see how he does in his NFL debut, and we can reassess on what we're doing with Jonathan Brooks for week 10, but this is a step in the right direction, no doubt about it. looks to be on track to make his NFL debut this week. Adam Thielen limited in practice again Thursday, so he could be making a return. That would put a wrench in any ads for Xavier Legette or Jalen Coker that were executed on waivers this week. However, they all remain stashes until we see how things play out. Adam Thielen could still, in theory, be traded by the team, which would make sense. No practice for David Njoku for Thursday. That's the second straight day, so let's keep tabs on that. Njoku has missed time this year, trending up as a strong tight end one play rest of season, but obviously he has to play for that to come to fruition. Amari Cooper limited in practice again on Thursday, so 2 limited sessions puts him on track to play. The wrist injury was one that he suffered this past week. This is not an old injury. This is a new injury. But back-to-back limited practices for a veteran wide receiver. Cooper should be able to suit up. How effective he will be is another question. He didn't seem to play all that much last week. Derek Carr limited in practice for the second straight day. I don't know that he's necessarily ready to make a return. Double checking if I can get any type of update on that. Is Derek Carr expected to make a return this week? Expected to start. Set to start. Okay, Derek Carr is back. All right, great. That's good news for the offense. Limited in practice for the second straight day. Again, 2 limited sessions for a veteran player. Typically puts them on track to play on Sunday. This is a boost for the Saints offense across the board. Alvin Kamara wasn't coming out of your lineup, but now he's back to must-start status with the quarterback upgrade and Carr returning. Chris Olave. The connection between Carr and Olave through a season and a half of Carr being the quarterback of the Saints has not been great. However, Rashid Shaheed is gone for the season. They don't really have any other alternate options to turn to. Bub Means is also set to miss some time with an injury. It's Chris Olave and, oh my God, Mason Tipton. There's another name that I'm forgetting. Forgive me. Cedric Wilson. I mean, it's Chris Olave. Chris Olave has to be funneled as many targets as he can handle, even though him and Carr have not necessarily had the strongest connection since Carr got to New Orleans. Nevertheless, you put Chris Olave back into your lineup and you roll the dice on a mammoth target share that he should receive out of necessity. Everybody else can remain on the bench. I don't know. I guess Taysom Hill can be fired up as a desperation tight end. We've seen him come through when nobody projects him to do anything before. So you never know. Let's see. A trio of Jacksonville Jaguars were limited in practice on Thursday. That's Brian Thomas, Travis Etienne, and Gabe Davis. It was originally reported that Brian Thomas might miss 2 to 4 weeks, but he is practicing on a limited basis. So I thought he was set to miss a little bit of time. Not a long amount of time, but a limited amount of time. I mean, if Thomas can log another limited session, then there's reason to believe that he'll be out there this Sunday against Philly. We'll see about Etienne and Gabe Davis. Not that Gabe Davis is in consideration for your starting lineup. And honestly, at this point, I probably wouldn't fire up Etienne either, even if he's active. I mean, he's missed 2 weeks. He got hurt week 6 against Chicago, did nothing. Prior to that, weeks 4 and 5, limited outputs, low outputs for Travis Etienne. I would avoid him too. The only Jaguar that is practicing on a limited basis that I am curious about as it pertains to my starting lineup is Brian Thomas. The rest are left on the bench. Tony Pollard did not practice for the second straight day. And neither did Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd is not in your starting lineup, but Tony Pollard was. So his status is officially questionable at best right now. I don't know that I would necessarily suggest firing up Tajay Spears if Tony Pollard does not play. Spears has missed a little bit of time here himself. I guess, from the perspective of him getting a lot of snaps and opportunities, he's a potential spot start, but he's on the injury report himself still. Oh, he missed practice today. Oh, God, Tajay Spears, what are we doing? He was limited yesterday. I remember that, but he missed. Okay, so the Titans are down to Julius Chestnut and a prayer in their backfield. Yeah. Pollard needs to practice in a limited fashion for us to consider him for your starting lineup. We got to keep tabs on that one worth monitoring. Tajay Spears missed practice today after logging a limited session. That is a step in the wrong direction after missing the past 2 weeks. So, yeah, even if Tajay Spears returns to practice on Friday in a limited fashion, I don't feel he's not after this development, he's not in consideration for the starting lineup. We would need to see the vibes turn around in a big way by Sunday between Pollard being out and Spears being off the injury report for us to feel remotely okay about considering him. And as of right now, we're not there. We're not there with Tajay Spears. So, Titans backfield, one worth monitoring. Calvin Ridley did fully practice, though, so he should continue to see all the work he can handle from Mason Rudolph, and now he has catchable targets. So, Ridley can be fired up into your starting lineup as a wide receiver, too. Although Will Levis is practicing. If Will Levis practices, then we probably need to pull Calvin Ridley out of our lineup. But if Mason Rudolph is the starting quarterback, then Ridley can be started. Zamir White did not practice Thursday. His disaster season continues. Alexander Mattison is on the flex radar. In this matchup against Cincinnati, I know he didn't do much this past week, but the Chiefs have the best, one of, if not the best, run defenses in the NFL, and the Raiders are not a good offense. But Alexander Mattison is good enough to give you a floor play at the running back position. If you've got injuries, if you've got bye weeks, Jordan Mason, Najee Harris, or injuries, or you went 0 RB in your draft, Alexander Mattison presents a flex opportunity, fringe RB2 floor play, just based on some volume, especially if Zamir White doesn't play. Dallas Goedert did not practice for the second straight day. He's looking to miss another game. So look for alternate options at tight end. Deontay Johnson not listed on the injury report. He is tracking to make his Ravens debut this week. The report came out, I think it was from Josina Anderson earlier. Does she still work for ESPN? I don't even know. That Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman will remain the starting wide receivers for the Ravens. I'll believe that when I see it. All due respect to Rashad Bateman. You didn't trade for Deontay Johnson for him to be the receiver that runs the third most routes. He's going to be out there. Maybe Bateman runs ahead of him on a per snap or on a snap basis this week, but that will change as Deontay gets acclimated with the offense and caught up to speed with the playbook. Deontay is a risky start this week, just like all of the receivers who have been traded thus far have been risky starts in their first game. He's more of a wide receiver 3 with probably not a huge ceiling in this matchup against the Broncos, a game where, in theory, Baltimore should be able to run the ball a decent amount. And then especially so if Lamar Jackson is out, then we may not want to start any pass catchers. If it's who is their backup actually? It was like Tyler Huntley for a little while. He hasn't been on the team. That's right. It's Josh Johnson. Sorry, Josh Johnson. Josh Johnson, has he been around for? Why do I feel like he's like a 35-year-old NFL vet? Not a 35-year-old, like a 35-year vet. I feel like I've heard the name Josh Johnson forever. Yeah, he's 38. That makes sense. He's been in the league for, give or take, 27 years. Yeah, so obviously if Lamar sits, I mean, Zay Flowers, Deontay, Mark Andrews, I'm looking for anybody else. I'm not starting those guys if it's Josh Johnson. I'll start Derrick Henry because I have to, but I'm not going to feel good about that one either. Yeah, we need Lamar. We need Lamar to play. Please play, Lamar. Please be okay. Obviously be okay. We want you to be healthy regardless of fantasy, but for fantasy purposes, please play. And the Chargers are getting healthy. DJ Chark, Quentin Johnston, Hayden Hurst all fully practiced Thursday, so they are getting healthy. Ladd McConkey was removed from the injury report, so giddy up on the Chargers, I guess. The only guy you're starting from that group is McConkey. And he has earned the right to be considered for your starting lineup if you start 3 wide receivers. Okay, those are the latest injury updates that we have as of this beautiful Halloween Thursday. Okay. I will take questions now. Appreciate everybody's patience and welcome in on this Halloween evening, however you're choosing to spend it. I assume most of us are probably watching Texans-Jets in some capacity. But if not, hopefully enjoy the holiday, however you choose to spend it, whether you're giving out candy, walking around trick-or-treating, or just having a party, or maybe doing none of the above. Hopefully it's an enjoyable Thursday. I will get to if you're new, welcome. I'll explain how this works. If you've been around the block, welcome back. I will remind everybody how this works. Members will get first priority to questions answered and comments responded to. That is one of the perks of being a member of the channel. If you are interested in becoming a member of the channel, those details can be found in the first link in the description of this live stream and all the videos and streams on the channel. If you're feeling so inclined or feeling generous on this Halloween, you can send a super. That would also be a line jumper. You don't have to, but that would get you a priority response to your questions. If you are not a member and don't choose to send a super, that's okay. I will still answer your question, but I will just ask for some patience as I work through members and supers first. If you're not if you're not a member, whether you're a member or not, if you're enjoying the stream, if you're enjoying the conversation and the dialogue, I only ask that if you could, whether you're a member or not, to just like the stream. That helps me out for algorithm purposes. And it's just a click of a button. Appreciate that in advance. I see Derek. I see Greg. I see David. I see Jay. What's going on, guys? Happy Halloween. Happy Halloween to everybody, but special shout out to the members helping to support the channel. Let's get into it. Opponent just swapped Tank Dell into his lineup for Smith and Jigba. Is DK Metcalf playing this week? I forget. I don't remember if he was on the injury report. Yeah, he's still on the injury report. Misses practice Wednesday. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't mind that call. But I would rather play Dell. I mean, that's your opponent's lineup, so whatever. They maybe did you a favor. I'm not a fan of starting players if I don't have to on Thursday Night Football, especially when they're on the road and they're not slam dunk studs. Tank Dell is a good football player, but he's not a slam dunk fantasy stud, at least not yet. But out of necessity, he's going to operate as the team's wide receiver 1 tonight, so I would probably play him just based on some volume, and he had a decent game last week. Smith-Njigba actually has a tough matchup by the numbers. He did okay last week, 6 catches for 69 yards. That was the wide receiver 42 on the week. I mean, that's a decent stat line as an NFL player, but for fantasy purposes, you're wanting more than that, especially when DK Metcalf doesn't play. Yeah, I would say let him do that. That's fine. Here we go. We got a risky trade offer. You're trading Josh. Oh, I think I saw this in the I think I saw this in Discord, Derek. I got to get you added as a member over there. I didn't realize this was your question. I think I remember seeing this, but I missed it in the Discord. I saw it, but I'll respond now. Let's put it that way. And I'll get you added as a member in Discord. That way I know. Trade Josh Allen and Montgomery for Saquon. Yeah, I would, in a 1 quarterback league, I would probably do this. Wilson, Higgins, Reed, Deontay. Yeah. With Higgins probably missing a second straight game, Deontay is looking shaky in his first game with the Ravens, especially if Lamar Jackson doesn't play. Yeah, I would be more interested in trying to trade Montgomery and Allen for, a wide receiver upgrade. And I wouldn't worry about, I hear what you're thinking as far as blocking somebody from having Stroud. Stroud isn't worth blocking somebody on right now. He's not delivered on fantasy expectations. His ceiling might come back a little bit with Nico Collins making his return presumably next week. But I would almost wish that you left Stroud as an option for your opponent to pick up this game and roll those dice, because I don't like Stroud tonight. He's got 2 QB1 performances this year, week 1 and week 4. Like, past couple of weeks, he's been outside the top 24 quarterbacks. He's been worse than a QB2. I wouldn't even worry about. I see your thinking, Derek. Block your opponent from maximizing on potential available players. But in this scenario, I would drop Stroud. You already have 2 quarterbacks. You have Allen. You have Dak. That's a roster spot that you could use yourself on running back or another wide receiver. Pick up another wide receiver. You could use some wide receiver help. I would drop Stroud because nobody can use him now anyway, because if you've already had him for more than 24 hours, then he's going to go back on waivers anyway, and the game is in an hour and a half. So it's not like anybody can use Stroud. I don't think he's worth rostering. If you have Josh Allen and CJ Stroud, I would tell you to drop CJ Stroud outright. The fact that you also have Dak makes it like don't worry about blocking somebody who is weak at quarterback from a name that is right now just a name. Stroud has not been the QB1 for fantasy that people had the expectation of for him this year. He just isn't. He's only had 2 QB1 weeks, and they were both more like low-end QB1 weeks. They weren't top 5 performances. He has 2 top 10 performances this year, and he's been outside the top 15 just as many times. Actually, I think he's been outside the top 15 more than that. Yeah. He's been inside the top 10 twice as quarterback performances, and he's been outside the top 15 4 times. He's been the QB 15 once and the QB 14 a second time. Stroud has not had a good year. And this was with a healthy Nico Collins at times. And he lost Stephon Diggs for the season. Drop Stroud. Pick up a wide receiver, Derek. Any wide receiver. That'll help your own depth. That'll help your depth. I don't mind the move. Going back to your original question, I don't mind the move to acquire Saquon, but I would be more interested if you could add like a stud wide receiver through this trade. Because Higgins' season is teetering on him just being unreliable. Because if the Bengals stink, and right now they stink, Higgins may preserve himself for his next contract, which he can get this offseason. Last time I checked, the Bengals didn't cave, right? They didn't pay T. Higgins. They didn't give him a new contract. Nope. He's an unrestricted free agent. Derek, I would look to, in a vacuum, I say yes to this trade, but you should be looking for wide receiver help. Higgins may not be trustworthy rest of season, especially if the Bengals season goes in the toilet. And right now, it's not looking good. What are they, 2-5? They're 3-5, but they've got the Ravens and the Steelers ahead of them. That's a tough spot to be in. I would be worried about Higgins rest of season. If he mails it in, which he absolutely could, because he's got his next contract in mind. Yeah. In a vacuum, I would do this trade, but I would prefer to have some wide receiver help. He had to go to a party. Well, happy Halloween, Derek. Hopefully, whatever moves you end up being able to make, it works out. Let's see. I also see Nick sent a super. Appreciate that very much, Nick. Very kind of you to offer that. I'm gonna get to my. I see that. That's up next after I get to the members, but wanted to make sure I shouted that out. Appreciate the generosity on this Halloween night. You've got Hawkinson. No, I would plan to play Ferguson tentatively and maybe fire Hawkinson next week. The Vikings have the Colts on Sunday night this week. It's a good spot. I would probably play Ferguson. We can play Hawkinson next week. Let's give him a week to get his sea legs under him. I would play Ferguson, and then we can consider Hawkinson for week 10, Greg. But good hold. I mean, he's back. He's back, and the Vikings are competitive. So Hawkinson's gonna play this year. They're not gonna shut him down early because they're better than I think a lot of people expected them to be. So good hold all the way around. David, you're playing Breece Hall tonight. You're playing Bijan. I wouldn't play Baker. I would play Dak as your quarterback. I would play Olave as wide receiver 1. I would play probably McMillan as wide receiver 2 because Higgins doesn't look like he's going to play. Keenan Allen had a boring game last week with not a lot of upside because he's older and this offense is inconsistent. You're playing Breece tonight. You're playing Bijan. You're playing Baker. You're playing Olave. You're playing Kareem Hunt in the flex. You're playing Cade Otton at tight end. So load up on your Bucks, and you play Olave and McMillan at wide receiver. We can revisit that on the weekend if you need to, but definitely play Breece tonight. What's going on, Jay? Would I rather start Jacobs or Brian Robinson? If you can only start one, Jacobs missed practice on Wednesday, right? But he missed a little bit of practice last week, and then he proceeded to play. He turned in a limited practice today. It depends on. I mean, if Jordan Love is out, Josh Jacobs might get all the work he can handle. So it might not be that bad. Brian Robinson gets the Giants. That's a very beatable matchup. Jacobs gets the Lions, which is actually a really tough matchup. I may actually consider. I like Josh Jacobs, but if you can only play one, Jay, I may actually consider Brian Robinson here. It's a much better matchup. And Love's on the injury report. Jacobs himself is on the injury report. Is Brian Robinson on the injury report? He has been the past couple of weeks, but it hasn't stopped him. Yeah, he's on the injury report, but he's limited. He's fine. Brian Robinson has been a little lackluster the past couple of weeks. He's been outside the top. He was outside the top 30 last week, and he was the RB20 week 7 in a good matchup. But he was coming back from a 1-game absence, so he might still be working his way back. I would tentatively plan to play Robinson over Jacobs. Better matchup. Jacobs is on the injury report, and Jordan Love is hurt as well. I would plan to play Brian Robinson. You got up for Washington. For this week, I mean, you could try the Patriots against the Titans. They're a pretty gettable offense, Greg. You could try the Lions against the Packers if Love doesn't play, but if Love does play, I'm not as excited about that. Where is that game? Is that in Green Bay or is that in Detroit? I'm checking. It's in Green Bay. Yeah. I guess you could try the Patriots against the Titans. That's a decent matchup. And then I guess if Jordan Love doesn't play, even though he's now trending toward playing, you can consider the Lions, but that's a tough matchup on the road. Yeah, you could try the Patriots. They should be fine. They should be fine against the Titans. The Titans are a very gettable matchup for opposing defenses. Okay, Nick, thank you again for the super. I see you send a second one. Appreciate that, my friend. I will get to both of these questions. Someone dropped Najee? That's silly. Is it? I guess it's because he's on his. It must be like, someone is either really desperate for running backs or for this week. That's crazy. I would not drop Najee Harris. See, my issue here is, well, to replace him, he's on a bye this week, so you can't use him this week. However, Pollard is missing practice 2 days in a row now for this week, and his status for this game is now looking murky, right? So you may not be able to rely on Pollard. Dobbins had a good game last week, which was not surprising because the Saints defense is not good. They're bad. You're going back to the well with Dobbins, even in a tough matchup against Cleveland. You have to play Dobbins. You have to play Dobbins in a tough matchup. So is this like, when you say replace, Nick, do you mean like long term, like rest of season? Because I'm not dropping Dobbins or Pollard. I am interested in adding Najee. I would be curious to know who else you have on your team. But the answer is yes, Najee should not be on waivers. Najee should be on a roster. So if he's available, I would want to know who the rest of your roster is. I want to know who the other guys you have are on your bench. Whoever your RB 5 or 6 is, or the last wide receiver. Like if Tony Pollard is the last guy on your roster, then I guess these are maybe some thinner rosters. This might be a shallower league. If that's the case, I want to keep Dobbins and I want to keep Tony Pollard. I would have to know who the rest of your roster is, because I don't want to drop Dobbins or Pollard. I want to add Najee, though. Like rest of season, I would rather have Dobbins above all of these guys. Of these 3 names, I would want Dobbins and then Pollard and then probably Najee. I want Najee rest of season 3rd from this group. So don't drop Dobbins, don't drop Pollard. If those guys are the last guys on your bench, then you may not be able to do anything. You may have to keep things as you have them. So depends on who like the last guys are on your bench. As far as a defensive start, I mean, you could just go with if the Texans are an option for you tonight, you could just go with them against the Jets. I don't love that they have to do it on the road on a short week, but they're a good team, they're a good unit, and the Jets are sputtering. Like, they struggled against the Patriots last week. The same Patriots that were called soft by their head coach the week prior. The Jets couldn't get anything going on. Like, Houston should be fine, and their pass rush is very strong. Jets' offensive line is not one of their strong points. So that's a mismatch for the Houston Texans in favor of Houston. New Orleans is in a great matchup because they're playing Carolina, but New Orleans stinks. Like, their defense isn't good. Their defense isn't good. Philly has Jacksonville. That's not bad, but they've been Philly's like a decent real life defense, but they're not. Like, they turned over Joe Burrow last week. I think that was their first turnover in like a month. They're not racking up huge numbers week to week. And then Cincinnati, their defense, I know they're playing the Raiders, but their defense isn't good. I would probably play Houston. They're the best unit of this group. Their pass rush is good. Where are they at with sacks? They're third. The Texans are third in the NFL in sacks. They have 27. Yeah. I think I would play Houston. The Jets are 18th in sacks given up this year. Okay. That's lower than I thought it would be. But it's not like they are a great offensive line. All right, StatMuse is trying to slow me down. I got to get out of here. I got to get off this website before it crashes my stream. Okay. Yeah, I would play Houston, Nick. I would play Houston. They are the best unit of this group, and they force sacks. They're third in the NFL in sacks. The Jets' offensive line is a beatable one. That's where I would go. But appreciate the supers, Nick. Very kind of you. I don't see the rest of your lineup or your roster. So as of right now, as much as I want to add Najee, I don't know who the last guys are on your bench. But Dobbins and Pollard are not dudes that I would drop. Not for the rest of the season. What's going on, Jake? Good to see you. Again, for anybody just joining or jumping in, if you're new here, welcome. I'm getting to member questions and supers first. That is a perk of being a member of the channel or feeling generous enough to send a donation. And then I will get to everybody else. I see all of your questions. No need to repeat any questions. I got them. I will get to them. Appreciate your patience with about an hour and 20 minutes to go before kickoff. So we got plenty of time. You drafted Dak, Jake. You started Darnold last week. You also picked up Stafford. Okay. Of this group, who would I drop for the season? Stafford looked really good last week with getting Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back. That being said, I would probably still rank him last of this group. He's still a good quarterback, but he's not going to throw for 4 touchdowns every week. He's usually good for like 300 yards and 2 scores, which is good. Those are good numbers. Matthew Stafford is still a damn good NFL quarterback, but he doesn't regularly give you the numbers that like puts your quarterback score over the top. He's probably the guy that I would move on from. I would probably still move forward with Dak. I know he's not been good recently, but they can't run it at all. So they're going to have to continue to throw on offense. And with how bad their defense is, the volume should be there for Dak at the end of the day. And then Darnold, I mean, he was off to such a good start on Thursday night last week, and then it just kind of stopped. He had 2 touchdowns in the first half. I think he was close to 200 passing yards, and then it just like nothing happened in the second half. But the Vikings are still a good offense. He gets to throw the ball to Justin Jefferson. That always helps. He's getting TJ Hawkinson back this week. That should help the offense in general. Jordan Addison remains a really good complementary piece for the offense. I would keep I would probably still drop Stafford, even though he had a really strong week this past week. And then if you have any of the wide receivers that these guys throw the ball to, if you have CeeDee Lamb, Dak is more valuable. If you have Justin Jefferson, Darnold is more valuable. If you have Kupp or Puka, then maybe that creates more of an argument for you to keep Stafford, but it would be dependent on if you had one of those 2 Rams wide receivers. If you don't have any of those guys, I would probably drop Stafford. Okay. I think I got all member questions so far. If I see any more member questions pop in, I will get to them as soon as I see them. And again, appreciate Nick for the supers. I think those are wrapped up as well. I will now start at the top of the stream comments. Appreciate everybody's patience. moving back up to the top. Would I trade Montgomery and Mike Evans for Saquon, or are you paying too much? On paper, it looks like you might be paying a little too much. If your wide receivers are loaded, if you are stacked at wide receiver, and Mike Evans, when he comes back from his injury, will just be a luxury piece for you, which I kind of find hard to believe, not because I don't believe, without knowing your wide receivers, I don't know how strong they are, but Mike Evans is Mike Evans and is poised to have a monster target share when he returns, when he comes back from this injury, with Chris Godwin being done for the year. They're going to be relying on Evans heavy to pick up a lot of the load for that offense. Saquon is having a phenomenal season and figures to continue to operate as a top 5 running back rest of year, but Montgomery has been top 10. Montgomery's been top 10, and Mike Evans, when he is right, has top 10 upside. I would need to know that you drafted either CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson in the first round, or Chase, one of those three. You got Drake London in the second round. You got or Cup in the second round. You got, I don't know who else has been performed. You got Terry McLaurin in like the third round or fourth round. If you've got stud after stud after stud at wide receiver, then okay, that creates an opportunity for you to swing for the fences on Saquon. But without knowing the rest of your wide receivers, I would say this is maybe when giving a little up too much, assuming that Mike Evans comes back in a few weeks, which is right now the timeline. So I would say paying a little too much, even though Saquon's the best player in this trade. You're playing Adams tonight. Yeah, like I said, I mean, Adams is on the flex radar. Again, your regular Thursday reminder, this goes for everybody. If you are playing a player tonight, make sure that they are not in your flex. Put them in a position spot that maximizes your flexibility, pun intended, for the rest of the week in case there are injuries or you're between a couple of other players. If you know definitively that you are playing a Thursday night football player, if it's a running back, put them in a running back spot. If it's a wide receiver, if you're playing Devontae tonight, don't put him in the flex, put him in a wide receiver spot. If you're playing Tank Dell tonight, don't put him in the flex, put him in a wide receiver spot. Keep your flex open for the rest of the week, for the rest of the games that are yet to kick off. But if you are playing Adams, he is on the flex radar as far as like projections go. You may not have a better alternative than him. On a short week at home, he could be okay. We can't settle for 5 catches for 50 yards here, though, from Davante Adams. We need more. We expect more. He's older, but he's still Davante Adams for at least one more season. We expect him to be an upper echelon player. Let's see if he can get it going. You're sitting Dell for Mooney. I'm fine with that. That's a scenario where I'm okay with sitting Tank Dell. Mooney has put up basically wide receiver 1 numbers on a per week basis this year. And it's a much more favorable matchup. He gets a full week off, the full Sunday or Sunday to Sunday, 7 days off, 6 days off, whatever you want to call it. Gets the full week in between games. I much prefer that to players on a short week, especially players on the road. I'm fine with that. That's a scenario where if Mooney cracks your top 2 or top 3 receivers over Tank Dell, I'm good with that. You're getting Marvin Harrison and Jordan Mason for James Conner and Terry McLaurin. Could you trade Metcalf or Higgins instead of McLaurin to make that deal happen? I think I would rather... If it's already done, then it's done. And I don't mind the acquisitions. Of course, Mason is a question mark rest of season if Christian McCaffrey comes back. If you've been listening, if you've been following along, if anybody's been following along, I'm on the record this year saying I have a lot of reservations around Christian McCaffrey. Now, of course, we are apparently very close to his return to play. I don't know what that looks like, though. And does Jordan Mason just completely go away when McCaffrey is presumably back to 100%? So you are rolling the dice on a potentially defunct running back in Jordan Mason by the time it's week 12 or week 13. And we don't want that because James Conner is not going anywhere. It's possible Jordan Mason goes somewhere. Actually, the more I think about this, the more I'm actually not crazy about what you have to give up in exchange for what you're getting. Mason, there are question marks about him. Marvin Harrison, I don't think there are question marks about him. We know he's talented. His usage has just been inconsistent, and that's not necessarily on him. Connor is not going anywhere, and McLaurin is in the best situation of his career. Mason is a question mark in this. The more I think about it, I'm not as enthused about this. I think Mason remains involved rest of season. But I don't know that necessarily looks like it has for the first 8 or 9 weeks of the year if and when McCaffrey makes his return. It could be a timeshare where Mason stays involved, but he's not going to be the bell cow anymore. Now, obviously, McCaffrey is a 28, 29-year-old running back who reportedly has arthritis in both of his legs. That's not good. But it's still Christian McCaffrey, and if he's ramping up and he's getting ready to go in practice and he's actually out there and he suits up, Christian McCaffrey's that type of dude where you go out and you expect him to perform at the highest level at the position. We still have those expectations for Christian McCaffrey if he's healthy. So I'm actually not as bullish on this. I think I would rather keep Connor and Terry McLaurin. I think I would actually keep what you have. You have Breece and Garrett Wilson. You have to play them both. I mean, I want to get James Conner into your starting lineup, but you have to play Breece Hall. He got 16 carries last week. He turned it into 80 yards. He got vultured at the goal line. Frustrating. I get it. I understand. But Breece Hall is still the better running back in this backfield. And the Jets are desperate. They need a win in the worst way. They need to get their best players the football. Breece Hall, we like Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen's a good football player. Breece Hall right now needs to be the guy for the Jets. I would think he gets as much work as he can handle even on a short week. Yes, Braylon Allen will mix in because running backs mix in, 1 in general and 2, even more so on Thursday night on a short week. But Breece Hall is their better, more efficient player right now in that backfield. They need to get him the ball. They need to utilize him. He has to be in your starting lineup. You have to play him. Have to play Breece Hall. And just hope for the best. He will be utilized tonight. They'd be insane to do anything otherwise. Braylon Allen or Tyler Lockett, that is a hell of a stream that you have to potentially consider here. If that is who you are between, Lockett is in position to start to be like a locked in high usage if DK Metcalf can't play for a second straight week. But last week in a high usage role, Tyler Lockett got 3 targets and caught 1 of them for 9 yards. He's been a top 20 wide receiver just once this year. And now he's on the injury report with an oblique issue. He's limited, so that's good for his presumed opportunity to play. But his usage has declined this year. The routes run has declined this year. If you are between Tyler Lockett and Braylon Allen, I actually think, oh boy, I love Tyler. I have been such a Tyler Lockett guy over the years. He's been so consistent. He's so rock solid. He plays so consistently, like he doesn't miss a lot of time to injury. Smart football player. big-time playmaker for a long time. I mean, he's also, 33 years old at this point, and 32, and dealing with a couple of injuries, and has been his usage has been scaled back this year with Smith and Jigba kind of leapfrogging him on the depth chart as far as opportunities, routes run, all that stuff. I think you play Braylon Allen if these are the guys you are between, especially if it's half PPR or standard scoring. If it's full PPR, then I guess Lockett has a little bit more appeal, but Lockett just hasn't been the fantasy asset this year that he usually is. He has one top 20 week. He's been the wide receiver 40 or worse 5 times this year. And one time that he wasn't worse than wide receiver 40, he finished as the wide receiver 38, essentially outside the top 40, as close as it gets. Tyler Lockett's awesome. He could give you 60 to 70 receiving yards, but he's had 2 games under 20 receiving yards. He's had another couple games under 50 receiving yards. Week 1, 77 yards. Week 4, 61 yards. Week 5, 75 yards. Week 6, 65 yards. So he's still eclipsing 60 yards receiving about half the time, but he's not scoring. He's getting 4 or 5 catches. Lockett is a wide receiver 4 with slight wide receiver 3 upside. Braylon Allen is kind of all or nothing, but you figure he'll get usage tonight as the backup running back on a short week. Might actually flex Braylon Allen, even though it's not a great matchup. Two touchdowns on the year for Allen. He's been single-digit rushing yards essentially a third of the time. I think his usage will be a little bit higher tonight. I think Braylon Allen's usage will be a little higher tonight. I think I would run the risk on him, but you're hoping for a strong RB3 performance. It's an RB3 versus a wide receiver 3. I guess I would say Braylon Allen. Lockett is a low floor play at wide receiver in full PPR. Allen is a low floor running back 3 in half PPR or standard scoring. I guess I maybe slightly lean Allen on the short week. I guess I slightly prefer Allen. I got Derek's questions. I got Greg's questions. Appreciate the members. Keon Coleman or Jalen McMillan this week? Coleman is a good football player whose usage could be up and down week to week in a Bills offense that spreads it around. He's a better player than McMillan, although McMillan has a larger opportunity. Tampa plays Kansas City on Monday night. The Bills get the Dolphins. Coleman's an upside play. I probably would say Coleman. I think he's the swing for the fences. They're both kind of boom bust. But Coleman has wide receiver 3 appeal with potential wide receiver 2 upside because he has been drawing a lot of targets and he has been making plays with them. I'll give the slight nod to Coleman. Tougher matchup for McMillan on the road against Kansas City. I'll take Coleman. I'll take Coleman. Slightly. Not definitively. I got a super from Tyler. Appreciate it, Tyler. There might be. I might need some clarity here. So Dell is gonna. Yeah, Dell's gonna see Sauce Gardner tonight. Dell, Reed, or Cook? Which Cook? James Cook? Hopefully not Dalvin Cook. We don't want to play Dalvin Cook. Is that James Cook, Tyler? I would say if it's James Cook, you're playing. You have to play James Cook if that's the name. If it's not, I'm not sure who that is. And then Reed versus Dell, I would probably give the nod to Jaden Reed. Detroit is difficult to run on, but you can throw on them. It is more doable to throw on them. And it's a home game for the Packers. This is, of course, assuming Jordan Love plays and Tank Dell plays on Thursday Night Football. So we're not going to have the luxury of definitively knowing by kickoff tonight if Jordan Love is going to play, which therefore boosts the prospects of Jaden Reed. However, he did return to practice today, Love did, which puts him on track to play, which would therefore put, organically, that would put Jaden Reed ahead of Tank Dell for me in any projections or rankings this week. Oh, Coleman. Got it. You're good, Tyler. Appreciate the super. Yeah, I needed some clarity on that one. Jaden Reed. I like Coleman. I just got done telling somebody Coleman versus McMillan, but Coleman versus Reed, with all due respect to Jalen McMillan, I know Jaden Reed didn't have a sorry, I quickly grabbed the wrong thing. Jaden Reed, I think he had an okay week last week, but not one that's up to his standards. But his standards are high because he's a good football player. And again, the Packers are going to have to throw the ball against Detroit because it's going to be a difficult time for them to run on them. He had 2 catches for 55 yards last week. And one of those was like a big catch and run that helped kind of salvage his performance, but he was still, outside the top 50 wide receivers last week. That being said, Jaden Reed is a good football player, and I am willing to go back to the well with him. I would play Jaden Reed. It's a good matchup. The Lions are giving up production to opposing wide receivers, opposing passing games in general. I would say Reed. At home, I'll play Reed. Coleman has dart throw upside, but it could be Amari Cooper's week this week. It could be a Khalil Shakir week, a Dalton Kincaid week. Allen could run it all over the place. It could be a James Cook week. There's a lot of mouths to feed in Buffalo, and that makes predicting which wide receiver plays well a little unpredictable. The Packers have a similar situation, but Jaden Reed is their number one wide receiver. I would argue going into each week. Coleman is a good football player, but he's not that yet. He's drawn a lot of targets recently because he's earned them. But he's not the guy that I would say that's the Bills wide receiver 1 every single week. He might be their wide receiver 1 some weeks. He will be their wide receiver 1 some weeks, but not every week. I would project going into each week operating as if Jaden Reed is the Packers wide receiver 1, even though there's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense as well. So I'll say Reed. And then again, I like, Tank Dell could come through from a volume perspective tonight, but it is a tougher matchup. And the Jets can key on him with Nico and Diggs being out. Still, I think Dell has 10-point PPR upside, 10 to 12, 15 would be a huge game on a short week on the road. 10 to 12 PPR point upside for Dell. But it's a tough matchup. So I would say Reed. And then is that last part a trade question, Tyler? For something for Dell? I'm not sure. Let me know. But I'll say Jaden Reed of your options. I appreciate the supers. Very kind of you. Let me know what that last portion is for Dell, and I can address it or answer if it's a trade question. Let me know. But appreciate the supers, Tyler. Thank you. Thank you very much. Where's my spot in line? I got it. Lots of running back depth. This is a dynasty question. Would I trade Connor and Dobbins and multiple? Wait, what is the return here? Would I trade Connor plus Dobbins? Oh, sorry. I didn't see the 4. Trade Connor, Dobbins, and a 26 first for a 25 first, a 27 first, and Jalen Coker. Okay, so 2 starting running backs who are Connor's a little older. Dobbins is not old, but has gone through it with multiple severe injuries. He's back now and balling, but understood. You have lots of running back depth. You'd be giving up Connor and Dobbins, 2 vets that do help you win this year, and a first-round pick 2 years from now for a first-round pick this year, a 27 first-round pick, and an intriguing depth wide receiver to kind of allow you to develop on your bench in Jalen Coker. If you're a contender, then no. If you are rebuilding, then I am okay with this. So it depends on your situation. But if you're a contender now, then I would probably not do this. If I'm a contender, I want as many pieces as I can possibly have at my disposal for my championship run. Even if I have a surplus at running back, that can dry up so quickly. We can see multiple. We always hope for a clean bill of health for every single player every single week. But in reality, we know that that's not going to happen. Somebody's going to get hurt, unfortunately, for better or worse. It's going to happen. If I'm a contender, I want players that can help me this year, even if they're like my RB 6 and 7. I want to hang on to those players. But if I'm in a rebuild, then yes, I want to get rid of older running backs for draft picks and younger players. So if you're in a rebuild, fine. If you're in a rebuild, fine. If you're contending, no. It depends on your specific situation. And if you are rebuilding in Dynasty, if anybody doesn't play Dynasty, or if you're thinking about playing Dynasty, I'm happy to talk Dynasty with anybody. It is fun. It is a lot of fun. You are truly a GM. Well, sort of, anyway. There's no off season. If you are rebuilding, you want to unload running backs of damn near every shape and size, unless they're 22 or 23 years old and they have a path forward as like the team's potential starter, or at least like a 1A or strong 1B in a good committee. Like David Montgomery's role comes to mind. If we can look into the future and see like 2 years from now, like this guy is good now and he's going to stay involved and stay good, and he's 22 years old, fine. But if you're in a rebuild and you've got a 25-year-old running back, you have a piece that you should be selling, not keeping. You want to sell your older running backs in a rebuild. But if you're contending, then don't do this trade. Stroud, Stafford, or Tua? This week, Stafford. Because Stroud is on a short week against the Jets without 2 of his top 3 receivers. And Tua, I mean, against Buffalo on the road, didn't really perform well in a great matchup last week. Obviously, it was his first game back after a multi-week absence. Stafford, on the other hand, looked good with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua returning. And by the numbers, it's a division matchup against Seattle, but by the numbers, there's nothing scary about it. I would play Stafford. Keenan Allen, Liggett, Coker, Parker Washington. We're picking 2 of this group. That's a difficult, it's unfortunate that you have to choose the Panthers wide receiver that you have to pick from. but I would probably say Liggett has the advantage over Coker because Liggett was involved before the trade of Deontay Johnson. So he figures he's already something of a full-time player for them, or has been a full-time player, especially with Adam Thielen having been on IR. And then Parker Washington, I mean, he's, I think, a little too far down the board right now. I know he has an increased opportunity because Christian Kirk is out, but Brian Thomas is practicing and is tracking toward playing. So I would say no to Washington and no to Coker, just because this is his first game, second game really. He had an extended run last week, but if I could only rely on one guy, it would probably be Liggett. And I would play Keenan Allen and just hope for the best. I don't remember who the Bears have this week. It is they have Arizona. There's nothing Keenan Allen should be able to give you like a wide receiver 3 performance, I would think. Yeah, give me Keenan Allen and give me Liggett from that group. And let's give it a week on Coker and Washington. Flowers or Ladd McConkey? Right now, Ladd. I mean, if Lamar Jackson doesn't play, well, I'm not starting any Ravens pass catcher. And right now, well, this would be one where I would say, keep eyes and ears close to any updates leading up to kickoff. If Lamar Jackson is out, then the answer is Ladd McConkey. I would play Flowers if I know that Lamar is playing, but I would probably just go Ladd as of right now. If Lamar is limited and can't do the things that he normally can do, and even if he does play, then that's dicey. And with Deontay Johnson's acquisition, that limits Flowers' potential stealing in general anyway. I'll say Ladd McConkey. I'll go Ladd over Flowers. Especially with today, as it currently stands, the uncertainty around Lamar's availability for this week. Need one between Tank Dell or Brian Thomas Jr. This is an unfortunate situation because Dell goes tonight. You would rather play Brian Thomas. We don't know if he's going to play. They're saying he has a shot to play this week. If he can suit up, he's the guy that I would prefer to play. The problem is the other guy, Dell, plays tonight. Who would be your, if you played Brian Thomas, who would be the guy that you can pivot to if Brian Thomas ultimately is ruled out? That would be my question. I want to wait on Brian Thomas because he has a chance to play. I would prefer to play Brian Thomas over Tank Dell, but I need to know who your third option is if there is one in the event that you wait on Brian Thomas and he's ultimately ruled out. That's what I would want to know. That's what I would want to know. Schultz, Kraft, Ertz, Jonnu, Calcaterra. I mean, Tucker Kraft if Jordan Love plays. Tucker Kraft if Jordan Love plays. But we're not obviously going to know that. I would not Dalton Schultz. Don't play Dalton Schultz tonight. You have good enough options because even if Jordan Love doesn't play and that limits Kraft, then you can play Ertz. Ertz has been a tight end 1 this year. In fact, he has more tight end 1 weeks, I think, than everybody other than George Kittle this year. That's not to say he's a top 5 option every single week, but Ertz is the type of perfectly fine tight end stream where he may not win you a week, but he's not going to hurt you, and he's not going to give you a goose egg. he should at least be able to give you 4 catches for 40 yards. And I know that doesn't sound impressive, but in this tight end landscape, you'll take it. Basically, don't play Schultz. Don't play Schultz. I would play Kraft if Jordan Love plays. And if he doesn't, I would play Zach Ertz. I'm not feeling Dalton Schultz just because Diggs and Nico are out. Could he come through tonight? Yeah, but he hasn't given me any reason to believe in him this year. Dalton Schultz, who, yeah, I know, he's maybe an expanded opportunity. He had 4 catches for 52 yards last week. I mean, that's decent. This is not as good of a matchup, though. You can beat the Colts any which way you want to on defense. The Jets on the road on a short week is a little bit of a tougher challenge. Wait on Kraft and Ertz. If Jordan Love plays, Kraft. If Jordan Love sits, Ertz. Don't play Dalton Schultz tonight. All right, we're flexing 2 between DJ Moore, Chase Brown, Bucky Irving, Rachaad White, Cedric Tillman, the GOAT, Deontay Johnson. I will say not Deontay from this group right now. You have some pretty good options to turn to. It's his first game with the team, and Lamar might not play. DJ Moore gets the Cardinals. Chase Brown gets the Raiders. Rachaad White and Bucky Irving are difficult to trust because they play the Chiefs. That is not a good matchup by the numbers. I would probably go Chase Brown against the Raiders. And then who does Cleveland have this week? The Chargers. That's not a great matchup by the numbers. I would probably say DJ Moore. I know that Cedric Tillman looks like a baller. I get it. This is not a great matchup. Tillman's volume is good. I guess if you want to chase the volume, you could go Tillman. I think DJ Moore is the better player. His situation is very volatile with the Bears offense, but he is the better football player. I would say Chase Brown for sure. Tillman should have the volume. Bad matchup. Do you prefer a bad matchup with good volume or a decent matchup with unpredictable volume? I think I might just take the volume, actually, now that I think about it. All right. Chase Brown and Cedric Tillman. That's where I'm going from this group. Yep. It's not a good matchup for Tillman, but the volume is safe. I like DJ Moore, though. It's unfortunate you can't play 3 of those guys. You have to only play 2. Start Washington or the Broncos defense. I mean, the Broncos defense is in play if Lamar Jackson is out. I would still probably start Washington. Tentatively today, right now, I would still start Washington because Lamar still has a chance to suit up. If he practices in a limited fashion tomorrow, that puts him on track to play. The Broncos are only in play if Lamar sits. If he does, they're an intriguing stream. Tentatively right now, I would still play Washington, but obviously, let's keep tabs on Lamar's status. If he's out, you could go with Denver. If Lamar is out, you could go with Denver, but we don't know. We just don't know just yet. Trade Deontay for Pittman. Man, this is actually a scenario where it might be okay to trade for Pittman, because we haven't gotten the season from Pittman that we were hoping for, but the prospects of him being a good return on investment are officially still alive, because now Joe Flacco is the quarterback for the Colts for the rest of the season. Deontay, on the other hand, he's now on a contender, which is good for his prospects to, he's not going to get shut down by a bad team or whatever, some random situation on a bad team that could always rear its ugly head. But ceiling could be capped because of the passing volume. Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, all that stuff. Deontay's ceiling is not necessarily where it might have been had he gone to another situation. Pittman, on the other hand, has a chance to stay or to regain relevance catching the ball from Flacco, which should stabilize the passing offense in a big way for Indianapolis. I don't mind this roll of the dice. I like Deontay a lot, too. I've been a Deontay guy. I don't mind this roll of the dice. I don't mind acquiring Pittman. If you're trading Pittman and acquiring Deontay, I would actually say that gives me more pause. But if you're trading Deontay away and acquiring Pittman, I actually think I'm okay with that. I actually think I'm all right with that. Did not miss the question. Don't worry, I have my spot in line. But yeah, if you think I might have missed it, feel free to let me know. But I have my spot in line. What is this up that I'm getting? That Puka left practice early today. I'm gonna be sick to my stomach. Injures his knee on Thursday. Suffered a knee injury during Thursday's practice and will be listed as limited on the Rams' second Week 9 injury report. This is the worst. This is the absolute worst. God, I hope this is I hope this is minor. I hope this is just minor. But all right, something to monitor. Puka injures his knee in practice on Thursday. As if this season couldn't be any more fun. Let's see. Andrews or Hawkinson? I'll play Mark Andrews because it's Hawkinson's first game back after missing a lot of time. Play Mark Andrews. He has returned from the dead. Of course, we do have until Sunday to make this call. You could play Hawkinson if Lamar Jackson is ultimately ruled out, in which case I would that's a scenario where I would go Hawkinson. If you have him and Mark Andrews and Lamar doesn't play, then I would play Hawkinson over Andrews. But if Lamar plays, then Andrews. And then Kyler or Bo Nix. I mean, if it's 4-point passing touchdowns, I would probably stick with Kyler. But if it's 6-point passing touchdowns, Bo is perfectly fine to go with. The Baltimore Ravens passing defense, they stink. They are not good. And that puts even guys like Bo Nix, who have to play them on the road. You typically try to avoid situations where your players are playing Baltimore on the road. This is not one of them. You could stream even a guy like Bo Nix against this Ravens defense, even on the road. They are not good in the secondary. If it's 6-point passing touchdowns, I would be fine to go with Bo Nix. If it's 4, I might still stick with Kyler because of the rushing upside. But if it's 6-point passing touchdowns, I might go Bo Nix here. The Ravens passing defense is not good. Not good. I got to imagine they're having a lot of conversations in that front office about, like, do they try to make a move to upgrade the secondary before the trade deadline? Because this is a team with Super Bowl aspirations, and they don't have the secondary right now to hold up. You have McMillan. Oh, yeah, I would. Yes. Instead of Lockett or Braylon Allen, yes, I would play McMillan. I know it's a bad matchup, but he feels way safer than these other two guys. He feels much safer than these other two dudes. Yeah, I would play McMillan. He was a bad Baker throw away from a monster catch for a touchdown last week. It didn't count, but like the opportunity was there and he got open. Baker missed him. No, I would play McMillan. I would feel way better about McMillan than Tyler Lockett, who has been an afterthought this year for the most part. And Braylon Allen, yes, I expect some increased usage tonight, but he has had sporadic performances and none that were really super noteworthy. Yes, I would play McMillan. I would play McMillan. That is where I would go. Definitely play McMillan over Tyler Lockett. Definitely play McMillan over Braylon Allen. Yes, do that. Worthy, Dobbs, McMillan, Sutton. You pick 2. Sutton is super appealing for what I was just talking about with Bo Nix. The Ravens secondary is usually elite. They're not good. They're usually elite. They stink right now. They're not good. It's very unlike the Ravens to have like a super weak link in their defense, but they do. That secondary is not good. So I would tentatively go Sutton. And then assuming Jordan Love plays, I would play Dobbs. Again, Love returned to practice for the Packers today. That puts him on track to start this week against the Lions. So you feel fine about the Packers offense. I would play Sutton in this beautiful matchup against Baltimore, and I would play Dobbs assuming Jordan Love plays. If Jordan Love doesn't play, I would put McMillan in, or I would put Worthy in. That's a very beatable Bucs secondary for the Chiefs at home on Monday night. I would put Worthy in over Dobbs if Jordan Love doesn't play. But if he does, then I'm playing Sutton and Dobbs. Downs or Devontae tonight, Downs this Sunday. I would play Downs. I think he's the Colts wide receiver 1. Sorry, Michael Pittman. But I think Downs is the Colts wide receiver 1, and Joe Flacco is on record saying he likes throwing the ball to Josh Downs. Josh Downs' ceiling is there with Joe Flacco in at quarterback. We haven't seen it. It's been, it's only been a couple of games, but to that point, like Adams is still getting acclimated with this offense and running as a second fiddle to Garrett Wilson. I would play Downs. Yeah, I would play Downs. He's got huge appeal right now. And it's a good matchup. He's got high-end wide receiver 2 upside this week with low-end. Actually, Downs has low-end wide receiver 1 upside this week. Adams has more like wide receiver 2 upside. I would play Downs. Do you trade Hunt and Pacheco plus a wide receiver for Gibbs? It'd be a lot to give up. You have Kyler, good. Andrews at tight end, all right. Bijan, you would be adding Gibbs by giving up Hunt and Pacheco. You also have Algier, so you have the Bijan handcuff. You have Tyron Tracy, good. You have Terry, you have Debo, you have DJ Moore, you have Brian Thomas, you have I see. Okay, you have a lot of good depth. I'm inclined to say yes to this. You are giving up a lot. And don't give up Terry. Don't give up Debo. Could you get away with giving up? I know that he's just coming off a 2-touchdown performance, but could you get away with giving up Tillman as the wide receiver and you still keep Terry, you still keep Debo, you still keep Brian Thomas, you still keep DJ Moore, who I think is a good football player, maybe not in a great situation, but has week winning upside because of how talented he is? If you could get away with giving up Hunt, Pacheco, and say somebody like Cedric Tillman in a 3-for-1 to get Gibbs, yes, I would say yes. I would do that trade. If you can make it happen, I would do that. I'm usually not a proponent of giving up 3-for-1, but in this instance, I would be okay with it. Pollard or Tank? This sucks because Pollard has missed 2 straight days of practice with an injury, and now his status for Sunday is cloudy. If you don't have a third option to turn to on your bench, then you have to play Tank Dell tonight because it now the possibility exists that Pollard doesn't play. So who is your third alternative if you need it? Because right now we can't rely on Pollard. We have to, without knowing his status for Friday's practice, we cannot rely on Tony Pollard. If your third option is is a dart throw, then you have to play Tank Dell tonight. Without knowing your third option, you have to play Tank Dell tonight. Pollard just may not play. Yep. Yep. Appreciate Saul Puka. I swear to God, this better be minor. This better be minor. I see the Schultz or Kraft questions. You don't have to, just a reminder, you don't have to repeat your question. I'm gonna delete the extras. You don't have to repeat your questions. I will get to them. Please do not. I understand wanting to get help, and I'm here to help. But please do not spam the chat. But yeah, do not play Schultz tonight just because of the expanded opportunity. I would play Kraft. Jordan Love is tracking to play. If Zach Ertz is still on the waiver wire and you don't play Schultz tonight and Jordan Love is a surprise inactive, you could pick up Ertz. But I would plan to play Kraft. I don't want to play Dalton Schultz. Not in this matchup on the road on a short week just because of an expanded opportunity. Tracy, Rashad, or Bucky Irving. And we'll know if Tracy has cleared concussion protocol, by the time any of these guys play, because the Bucs play on Monday Night Football. If Tyrone Tracy gets cleared, I would probably play Tyrone Tracy. It is a bad matchup for the Bucs running backs against Kansas City. The Kansas City Chiefs boast one of the best run-stopping units in the NFL. Rachaad White might be okay as a pass catcher, but the Chiefs have shut opposing backfields down. If Tracy plays, if he is cleared and plays, I would play Tracy. I was not expecting him to become the Giants' RB1 this year, but it looks like he is. He has taken that job from Devin Singletary. If Tracy clears concussion protocol, I would play him over the Bucs. If he can't and he's out, then I would play Rachaad White, because when you have to choose between backfield options in a bad matchup against the run, take the guy who can catch the ball, and that's Rachaad. So Tracy if he plays, Rachaad White if Tracy can't clear concussion protocol. But his prospects are looking good because he practiced in a limited fashion today. Addison or Adams tonight? I feel like this is probably a situation where I say go with Davante Adams and hope for the best in a game where you expect the Jets to have to throw the ball. I would play Adams. Addison has been up and down, and it's a lot of down, and now TJ Hockenson is making his return, so that's going to take even more opportunities away from somebody not named Justin Jefferson. Addison figures to be the one who loses out there. And he's already putting up sporadic production. I would play Adams tonight over Jordan Addison. 2 catches for 22 yards last week. Yeah, that's not going to get it done. It's a good matchup against the Colts. They can't stop anybody, but he's been inconsistent, and Hockenson is returning. I would play Adams over Addison. Give me Davante tonight. You have McMillan as a... Was this the... Oh, this is who you have. Okay. Yes, I would hold out on Brian Thomas Jr. over Tank Dell. This is what I would do. I would hold out. I would sit Tank Dell, and I would hold out for Brian Thomas Jr. because I want to play Brian Thomas Jr. if he plays. It would be a difficult matchup against Quinyon Mitchell, but Brian Thomas has been awesome thus far, and I would want to hold out for him. If he does not play, I am fine with the pivot to McMillan on Monday night. The Bucs are going to have to throw. McMillan is going to be involved. He was a bad throw from Baker away from having a huge day last week. Long bomb for a score. It was a bad throw on Baker's part. He missed him. I am fine with waiting on Brian Thomas, playing him if he plays, and playing McMillan if he sits. Yup. Let's see. You're playing Garrett Wilson tonight. That's fine. You're playing Tolbert. Okay. You have Douglas, Juju, Elijah Moore. Okay. You're between DeMario, Douglas. Juju, I don't think is practicing right now, so we can't rely on him. Elijah Moore gets the Chargers. Tough matchup. DeMario Douglas gets the Titans. That's not a good matchup. And what's Drake May's status? I actually don't know this. And I know that the game is coming up. I know there's a few more questions. I will get to everybody, promise. Appreciate everybody's patience as I work through questions. Drake May is limited. Oh, that's right. He's in concussion protocol. But he's limited for the second straight day, which is a good sign for his chances. Still not a good matchup. I would probably play Elijah Moore. Well, you could go Leggett. No, Elijah Moore against the Chargers. I mean, Elijah Moore's volume is up. He's a full-time starter for the Browns offense now with Amari Cooper traded. And in full PPR, he should get some volume. I would play Wilson, I would play Tolbert, and I would play Elijah Moore. I wouldn't worry about picking up those other guys. That's where I would go. Douglas is going to have to see L'Jarius Sneed. That's a tough spot. That's a tough matchup. I'll say Wilson, and I'll say Tolbert, and I'll say Elijah Moore. Separate league. Start 2. You're playing James Cook because you have to. Eckler versus Mostert. That's not as clear cut. Eckler and Mostert are difficult to trust. Like Achane is the clear top dog in this backfield. But he does get the goal line opportunities. Let's play this game. What has Eckler done the past few weeks versus what has Mostert's missed a little bit of time. 7 carries for 52 yards last week for Eckler. Eckler has been a top 24 running back once in the past 4 weeks, and he's been outside the top 30 twice, so that's not great. Mostert is the goal line running back for the Dolphins, so there's something to be said for that. And last week he had 2 touchdowns, and that's the only reason he had any type of value. I would say Mostert over Eckler because he's getting the goal line opportunities, and at least with Tua back, the offense's ceiling is higher. I'll say Cook and Mostert. And then start 2. So this is a start 4 out of 5. These wide receivers. I would play Mooney. I would play Dobbs. I would play Dell. Those 3 for sure. And then it's between Addison and Adunze. I'll say Adunze. Addison's been quiet, and Hawkinson is back. So his opportunities go down even further. I'll say Adunze in a better matchup by the numbers than what Addison has. Start Cook, start Mostert at those 2 running back spots, and the start 2, flex 2. So to me, that says start 4 out of 5. Everybody but Addison is where I'm going. And okay, got this. Appreciate the we have our marching orders here. But appreciate you sharing who your third option is. I definitely want to wait for Brian Thomas if he plays. He's a damn stud. Chase Brown, Smith and Jigba, Dalton Kincaid, Michael Pittman. This is 2 in the flex. I'm definitely playing Chase Brown against the Raiders. That is a good matchup, and he has been better than Zach Moss recently. So I'm definitely playing Chase Brown. Pittman is on the flex radar now that Flacco is the starter. Between him and Smith and Jigba, I would probably roll the dice on Pittman. Smith and Jigba has been kind of disappointing. He should have done better last week than he did with Metcalf missing the game. So I will say Chase Brown and I will say Pittman. Smith and Jigba is third here, and I would put Kincaid fourth just because I hate starting 2 tight ends. So if you already have a starting tight end and Kincaid is in flex conversation, I would just play 1 tight end and hope for the best. I don't like relying on 2 tight ends. Not today, not tomorrow. Not in any lifetime. I don't want to play 2 tight ends. I will play Chase Brown and I will play Pittman. His ceiling is back with Flacco in there, and it's a good matchup against the Vikings. They can be had through the air. Neighbors, Downs, Dell in half PPR. You are starting those first 2 names. You are starting Malik Neighbors, even though he's been kind of quiet recently. He's still really good. He's still a guy that we go back to the well with because just based on talent alone, and this matchup is beatable for him against Washington. They have been playing better of late, but this is a beatable matchup for Neighbors. And you're playing Josh Downs. That's the Colts wide receiver 1, whose ceiling is up with Joe Flacco in the starting lineup as the starting quarterback, on record saying he likes throwing the ball to Josh Downs. Josh Downs has low-end wide receiver 1 upside this week, as does Neighbors. Dell is maybe more on the wide receiver 2 radar. Should come through with some volume tonight, but it's a tough matchup having to go up against Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. You're hoping for a lot of targets, and he comes through with some volume. Neighbors and Downs, good matchups. Their ceilings are higher. Give me Neighbors, give me Downs. And then Baker or Rodgers. I mean, this is how much I don't trust Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers has Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, Mike Williams. It's not the same Mike Williams as his Charger days, but you know that he can go out there and make a big play, maybe occasionally. Ty Conklin's a solid tight end, and then he gets to throw the ball to Breece Hall out of the backfield. This is an excellent collection of weapons for Aaron Rodgers. I'm still starting Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield has been a damn stud this year, and Aaron Rodgers hasn't. Even last week, with no Mike Evans or no Chris Godwin, didn't Baker have like a 300-yard, 4-touchdown performance? And he's gonna and he's playing the Chiefs in Arrowhead this week, so they're gonna have to throw the ball. Baker this year had 1 bad clunker week 3 against the Denver Broncos when he only threw for 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Outside of that, he has been the QB2, the QB5, the QB3, the QB7, the QB2, the QB2, the QB7. He has been a top 8 quarterback every week this year except for 1. You're starting Baker. You're starting Baker with a skeleton crew over Aaron Rodgers with what looks like a very strong cast of supporting talent. Baker Mayfield, and it's like, he could lose 1 or 2 more guys, and I would still play Baker over Aaron Rodgers. Baker has been a stud this year, and they are going to have to throw the ball against the Kansas City Chiefs. Baker, for sure. Those are all of the questions that I see. Appreciate everybody's patience as I work through each question. I think we are all set ahead of Thursday Night Football. I will, of course, keep tabs on the live chat if there are any other last-minute questions or thoughts that anybody has. If not, obviously, first of all, best of luck tonight and happy Halloween to you all. I will be back on Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern for Start Sit Help. More Start Sit Help. We will have the full practice report of Friday available to us. I will be able to help you make some more definitive calls than I could tonight. So if you still have some start-sit questions hanging in the balance, I encourage you to come back on Saturday if you can. 5 p.m. Eastern, same time, same place, not same time. I start at 6 on Thursday, but same place, right here on my YouTube channel. Start sit help on Friday or on Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern. No start sit help on Sunday. It's the last international game of the year, but I will return to the start sit cadence of Sunday mornings. Those will be member-only streams moving forward, just Sunday morning. Saturday will still be open to everybody. Sunday, if you need any last-minute thoughts, will be for the rest of the season at the lowest level membership available. So it's still, not that much. You can access the Sunday streams as that will be members only. But Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday will remain open to everybody. And no Sunday stream. This will be the final week of the year without a Sunday stream. I got this question just earlier. Kyler or Bo Nix? Yeah, I mean, if it's 4-point passing touchdowns, I would probably still start Kyler. There has been much made about Kyler's play this year. But he is still running at an incredibly high rate. This is a good matchup. Last week was a good matchup. This is a slightly tougher matchup this week against Chicago. But he finally had like a really strong day throwing the ball, and that was in a bad matchup by the numbers too. He finally had a 300-yard passing day. He had multiple passing touchdowns for the second time this year. He actually didn't even run that much last week, Kyler, 5 for 19. I would think it's possible against a more aggressive defense like the Bears, he runs a little bit more this week. If it's a 4-point passing touchdown league, I would say Kyler. But if it's a 6-point passing touchdown league, Bo Nix is in play. The Ravens defense, specifically their secondary, is weak. It's not good. It's not very good. 4-point passing touchdowns, I'll take Kyler. If it's a 6-point passing touchdown league, I would actually consider Nix. And then between Dobbins and Brown, Dobbins has Cleveland this week. That's a slightly tougher matchup, but Dobbins has been really good this year. Brown gets the Raiders. That's a good matchup. That's a good matchup. But Zach Moss remains involved, and Dobbins kind of has this backfield to himself. So I think I lean Dobbins. If you can only play one between Dobbins and Chase Brown, I slightly lean Dobbins. Even though the matchup isn't as good by the numbers, Dobbins is getting most of the opportunities in the Chargers backfield. Brown is getting most of the opportunities in the Bengals backfield, but Zach Moss is more of a thorn in his side than Kimani Vidal is for Dobbins. And Gus Edwards is still on IR. So give me Dobbins. And then as far as Najee, it depends. I would, do you have a surplus of running backs and do you need a wide receiver? Then trade Najee for a wide receiver. Do you have 3 or 4 running backs and that's it? Then I would keep Najee because running back depth dries up incredibly quickly in the NFL. Injuries happen in waves, in droves. We've seen it in excess this year. Lots of injuries. A lot of injuries to wide receivers, actually, but that's not typically the norm. Running backs are typically the more volatile position when it comes to injuries. So it depends. Are you good at wide receiver and you need a running back? Then maybe don't trade Najee. Are you loaded at running back and could use a wide receiver? See if you can get like a Brian Thomas because he just picked up an injury. And if anybody, if somebody needs a wide receiver or somebody needs a running back. But if you only have like 3 or 4 regular running backs that you can rely on, I don't really want to trade that depth. It's too valuable. Najee is an RB2 rest of season. There's value in that. There's value in that. So whoever your other running backs are would be your answer. You can only pick between James Cook. You have to pick one of these guys. you can't play both of these dudes. If you can't play both, even in full PPR, dude, I don't want to sit Garrett Wilson, but I think I would rather play James Cook. I mean, you have to play both of these guys. But James Cook is an RB1. Garrett Wilson's a borderline wide receiver 1, but James Cook is a little bit more of a firmly, it's more firmly an RB1 than Garrett Wilson is a wide receiver 1, if that makes sense. I would rather play Cook. I want to play both. I mean, if this is a league where you only start 2 wide receivers, we need to have a conversation with your commissioner to expand that starting lineup for 3 wide receivers in the offseason. I'll write the argument in your favor for you if I have to, because you should be able to play both of those guys. But if you can only play one, I guess I'll play the RB1. I'll play Cook. I want to play both. You should be able to play both. If you can only play one, I guess I'll play the running back. And then, my last follow-up question here is, who are your running backs? Like, do you have 2 other guys that you're relying on? Do you have 4 other guys that you can rely on? And you don't have any holes at wide receiver. You're good at wide receiver. So, I don't want to trade running back depth for a quarterback or a tight end. You could stream those positions in a worst case scenario. You can't stream running backs in a worst case scenario. If you do, you're more likely facing an uphill battle to win. So I would say, since you don't have a need at wide receiver, I would say probably just keep Najee as part of your running back depth. Yep. I would probably just keep him. Especially now, he's on his bye week. Someone's probably not going to, they're not going to give you top dollar for a guy that they can't play right away. In all likelihood. They might, but the chances are lowered because he's on bye this week. Okay, everybody. Shutting this down here shortly. The game is kicking off in about 10 minutes. Obviously, enjoy the game. Enjoy your Halloween. If there aren't any last-minute questions. Again, I will be live again for Start Sit Help this Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern. If you want to talk through any last-minute thoughts ahead of the Week 9 full slate. And then starting in Week 10, the Sunday streams will be coming back for Start Sit Help. Those will be members only moving forward. If you need any last-minute thoughts in the final hour or hour and a half leading up to the Sunday slate. But Saturday, anybody is free to join and ask questions. Obviously, with members and supers still getting priority responses. But I will get to everybody eventually in the public streams, the public chats. But that'll do it for me tonight, I believe. Best of luck tonight with whatever your fantasy situation is. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the holiday, however you're spending it. And I will see you guys this weekend on Saturday. Thanks, everybody. Best of luck.